I'm here for the sole purpose to try a new fly. And so we'll go through some stuff. There's two things. I've never fished a poly leader, and a lot of my friends fish them, so I'm gonna swap that up and try that. But mostly I'm just gonna go up. The thing about midge fishing, it's about a 2-hour window. You don't have to. Tomorrow it is supposed to be between 40 and 60 below. I'm gloveless today. Highest temperature in Montana is where we're standing, 28. So I just wanted to try this bug out. So we're gonna go up here, just upstream into that flat water. When you're looking for midges, you need flat water. You know, you can fish them in the riffles, but you don't see the heads like you will in this stuff. We're gonna walk right up just above that beaver dam, see if there's any heads up, and try this new midge. So like I said, I've never used one of these poly leaders. Generally speaking, I fish a 7.5 foot, 3, 2X, whatever, and I add whatever. I'll even go down to 4X if I'm fishing dries, and then I add my tippet afterwards. But it's super simple to change these out. I'm just doing it, it's just a loop to loop. Everybody knows how to do this. And this is a new leader, so I'm going to save it. When you're trying to save these leaders, make sure you put the tippet on your fingers when you make your loop first, and wrap the butt around the leader, just like it comes out of the package. If you do it the other way, you will have a disaster trying to get those things undone. So I grabbed a 6.5 foot airflow poly leader, and I'll put this leader right back in here for right now. So with these leaders, these are floating leaders, and I've never used one. I've used the sinking ones, but I've never used the floating ones. And Braden, the guy filming, and a bunch of my buddies, Brian Fletching, he loves them. I've never used one, so I thought we'd do it. So putting a loop to loop together, everybody has seen this. Just slide that over there and come back to your tippet end. This has a tippet ring on it. Slide it back through that hole. It's just a finger lock right there. Super simple. I'm going to add, this is a 6.5 footer. I'm going to add 3 foot or so of 5 or 6X. I keep and for these I keep both fluorocarbon and mono with me. I'm going to start with mono. If they're techie, I put on the fluorocarbon hoping that it'll sink a little bit. But I'm going to start out with just some, I just want to see if they react to this fly. I'm not really all that concerned at catching them. I just want to see if they'll stick their heads up and say they like this design of fly, and if they do, I know they like the spinner style. I just have never fished. I just had this idea for this midge this morning. I was listening to Johnny mindlessly just talk on about something I didn't want to listen to, and some of my best flies have come listening to him talk. Every time I said that. So I'm just going to put a clinch knot on this. Never have, like I said, never used one of these. There's wet your knot. I'm using I got, I don't know, 2 foot. And like I said, I'm going to try a fly I just designed. So I've got a whopping, I've got 4 or 5 different flies with me, but I came to fish this one, so I'm going to try it first. I've got a few fish up above, which you'll see when we start, and I'm going to, they're eating, I just haven't seen, when I'm sitting here getting ready to fish, you need to be looking at other things. And like I've been looking since we got here to see if there's anything. I mean, I don't see a single adult up there. There's nothing flying yet, which is surprising because it's, I don't know, it must be 2 o'clock by now. And so I just tied that on with a Davy knot. And I want this fly, the hind end's supposed to sink a little bit, kind of keep this heart-shaped egg or wing set. So this fly's got a little heart-shaped wing set. It's a thing I do for my spinners, but this is a Midge, and so I'm going to give it just a little bit of floating up on the front. Actually, because I don't really care, I'm just going to powder this front with some frogs fanning. I don't want the hind end to float. I want it to ass to sink into the water. So I'm just dressing. You see I got my fingers pretty tight around there so I don't get it on the body. If I need to, if I want it to float higher, I'll take it out and I'll dress the whole fly. One thing I do not like when I use frogs fanning is I don't like to see it get on my leader. I don't like that white powdery stuff on my leader. I don't want it to sink or float. I mean, I'd prefer my leader to sink, and that's what I said earlier. If I think for whatever reason that they're refusing my fly, the first thing on the fly, the first thing I'm going to wonder about is the leader. You know, generally when you go out to fish small flies, you're using small tippet, and I like the lead. If the leader breaks the surface, that's better than just floating on top because it makes a reflection. We have virtually no sunlight today, and so I'm not worried about too much reflective value. So I'm going to walk out. There's one fish just above here on the left. There's 2 or 3 over there on the right. I like to fish at an angle if I can. Don't like to throw across these fish right over their head. If I have to, I have to. Like there's one dead center in the middle that's feeding right now. I'm going to walk out here, look around, slow, really move slow, stand out there, see if there's one particular fish. Since we started, 5 minutes ago, there's now, and Braden will take a picture up there, you'll see there's now about a dozen fish up, right? And by the way, winter midge fishing is the best dry fly fishing of the year. There's nobody here. It's just a beautiful thing. So I'm going to cross out here and just see. And what I'm going to start looking for is the size of the head, not so much the ring. Just I'm going to look because their heads are coming up right now. That one right in front of me is a nice fish. I'm going to get over here to the side and see if I can come from the side. It's kind of dead center. It's going to be hard for me to do. Everybody wanted me to get rid of these beavers. This is right in front of my lodge. It's made a phenomenal dry fly. So one other thing while we're here, if you notice I was breaking my guides, ice out of my guides. That's part of winter fishing. You put your rod, if you're just on the tip, you put it in the water. Try not to sink your rod deep like this, because it'll start coating your rod. Be particular about doing this and dropping your reel. At the end of the day, the reel gets wet, it's going to freeze on you constantly, so just be careful when you're doing it. The other thing I'd mention, you saw I had my towel with me. I've done videos about that. Absolutely critical. You know, you can get twice the span if you dry your hands out. You don't have to get the gloves on as quick as long as they're not wet. And the other thing you see I've got on is I've got boot foot waders, which I think are really critical for winter fishing. Your feet stay warmer. But most important, you notice that I don't have felts on. I do not have a felt on the bottom. That is the kiss of death when you're fishing in the winter. It'll build up snow. No problem when you're in the river. But when you're trying to get out and walk around, it's the kiss of death. Boy, that snow will build up on there like crazy. So I fished to 2 or 3 fish with this floating poly leader. You know, it seemed fine. Saw no, I was wondering about the tippet ring sinking. Didn't see anything. I kind of saw it hit before my fly did, so I kind of could track the fly a little bit. Really low light, but worked out pretty good. It's my first time ever using one. We'll see how it worked. The heart-winged emerger worked good. We got one fish up by it and it ate it, so good day. Hope you liked it. Welcome back. Just came in from out back. We were testing a new fly. This fly doesn't have a name yet. I've been fishing it for a year, and it's a style more than it is anything. I'm just going to show you the spinner. That's where it came from. It's got a secondary wing pad, which I'll go into that when I do the spinner one and why we came up with it. But if you look at this, you'll see the little, I mean, of course, all the gals want it to be called Valentine's or Heart or Honey or something because it makes a heart shape when you do the wing. And so, but really the key to this is stabilization for a mayfly wing. And I was thinking about midges because that's what's going on right now. And I went out back, I tied up this honey midge, whatever you want to call it. I have no idea what the name's going to be. Like I've said a lot of times, I don't actually name the flies before I tie them and see if they work. And this one works really well, the spinner in particular. But I just wanted to use the same concept for the wing on this midge because we just came, like I said, went out, tested it. I just tied it this morning. Like I said, when I was out back talking to Braden, I was listening to Johnny talk too much and I had to do something to occupy my brain. And so I just tried this version of wing. And so this is a super fast fly. And so I'm doing a 1180 fully mills, just general purpose light wire hook. There's nothing to this fly. I don't care what hook you use. It's a midge, right? It's a film midge. It's just, if you want to use a curved like a scud style, get your hind end down a little bit, that's fine. I'm using 18-aught Semper Fly because I got a size 18 on here. I'm going to tie this with all-purpose just rabbit. Now, the one I tied earlier, I did 3 styles. One I did with all thread, one I did with K-Pock, and this stuff's super floaty. Builds really tiny bodies. And then I did a couple with the just rabbit because I kind of like their hind ends to sink. I don't want it to be too floaty, but there's that transition period when there's adults are on the top and you've been fishing when they're just bulging, just pushing the surface and you're fishing them just hanging there. Sometimes I like one that just gives me another 10 minutes of the hatch because it keeps it floating. That's when I use a higher floating value like this K-Pock stuff. But on this one, like I've tied most of my midges is with a rabbit. Then the wing itself is just a trigger point. I use this for everything. This is the Pale Morning Dun one. Just kind of an all-purpose. I use this for virtually all my wings. And then I'm going to rib it with some micro flash. I'm going to use root beer. I use root beer a lot, either root beer or pearl, right? And this morning, it's very cloudy today, and so I prefer not to have quite as much in there. And so I just use the root beer. But feel free to, wing it, do whatever you like. So, like I said, I'm going to start this with I'm going to be using 18-aught thread. It doesn't matter, whatever you're comfortable with. You just get very little build with this. So, things we can see with. Now we're going to start this thread. You've heard me say it a million times, I like to have an idea where things are going to end, and that's like, so I'm going to leave this so it ends, right here, that's where the body's going to end. And I got to have a spot, because all I'm going to have is a little hump, like it's almost out of its shuck and it's coming forward. And so, put that on there. This is like I said, for those people who do not like to watch long videos, this will be one of them. So we're going to just set this Midge tubing. Now, I said earlier, I do this 3 styles, and I do that with a lot of them. I've got the all thread. Get out of there. Missed him. Should have pulled him back. I do the one with all thread. So if you wanted to do this fly, speed it up. It's a tiny fly. It'll float like, the wing itself will float it. If you wanted to just build this body up with black thread and ribbit, that would be just fine. It'll just sink its hind end a little bit further. I'm going to do it with a really fine dubbing. I'm not going to try to build hardly anything with this. And if it's got a little spike to it, that's all right. I generally don't, they're a tight body. They're not a picky body. This isn't like a mayfly that's got breathers or anything like that on it. It's just it's a slick looking body actually. I don't really think you can ever, I don't know why, but a little bit of fuzz in your body, a little bit of picked out. I mean, it never really seems to hurt things too much. Just, like people used to, I remember way back when there was an article in Fly Fisherman about some guy who would tie his flies and then hit him with the dubbing brush and make them all roughed up. And shit, why not just do it right the first time? But anyway, you can see there's just a little bit of pick to this body. I stopped that body right where I had put my thread, 16th or so back. And then again, whatever color, this is just really fine. I'm going to end up with, 5 or 6 turns in here. I don't think it really matters. If it's a bright day, I like bright. I use pearl. And when I tie these for myself, I tie, 2 or 3 of them one way, 2 or 3 with the other. And if one's not working, I try the other one. If neither of them work, I don't know what I do. Now I'm going to build just a little bit of a body here. And if you were doing this with a thread body, you'd come up here, and this is just something to set that fiber on, that trigger point on. If you were doing this with thread, come forward and make your look as a little bit of a bulbous, thorax on this thing. So if you're doing thread, when you get here, put a little bit of dubbing on. So this is the thing that's unique about this style. And we're going to come in here, and this is just a matter of tying a couple to know how much you want to use. I want you to just put a figure 8 and pick this up, get it where you want it. I want just a little bit of build in front. You'll be able to see here, just a little bit of build in front when we get done. So just a nice tight figure 8, finish right behind it. And now take the back wing, the wing away from you, and spin that counterclockwise. So it's turning to the left. It's going in a circular motion to the left. And you're just going to pull that wing down, and you can see right there it's going to make a little loop. Stay back away from the eye just a little bit. Put that in there. And now you just got to decide how much wing do you want back. And if you relax this, it'll unwrap that tightness, and that'll get bigger, right? That loop will. You can just pull it in, just play with it. You'll see which one works for you. Now take this one and spin it in your finger. This one you spin clockwise. Just lay it down there. Just let it sit. As long as your thumb's on there, it's nice and tight. And just look at them, right? Look and see. Is that how long you want them? If it was a big mayfly, obviously it'd be bigger. This one's just a midge, right? So I'm going to pick this up. If you want to cut this off completely, you can. I'm going to cut it off partially at the bottom, like that. And then I'm going to take most of that, and I'm going to leave just a little bit out front. And now I'm going to take my dubbing again, and I'm going to do this super fine. I don't want much build with this at all. And I'm going to come under here, underneath the between, and then the first turns I do are going to be, I'm going to do not a figure eight. I'm just building a little bulk underneath this wing to set them up. See how they're pushing up a little bit? We can get all the occasional stray in there, don't worry about it. Come back, and then I'm going to build a little bit of bulk because I don't want these things laying down. I hooked a couple in there, we'll get that in a second. So it's got a, just kind of, it's pretty short, so just a little bit of black right here in front of it, just to stand them up a little bit. They'll lay back down in a second. Boom. There it is. So, come in here, now we're done with the bug. It's, like I told you, it's a quick bug. And you can, these breathers, if you want to, you know, I did it both ways out there, but I only used the one with the breathers. And just, there's not much to that, right? To them out front. You don't want too much, but when you look underneath here, what you'll see is you've got that little bit of buildup behind the wing. And then with that buildup behind the wing, that kind of sits. So when the fly sits in the water, it sits a little bit more like this, right? Its hind end's down. The feelers are forward like a regular midge. It's pulling itself out, right? And it's going to ride on that little honey-shaped, get these stragglers out of there. It's going to ride on these right here, but you'll see underneath, they're going to ride on these little wing pads right here. So that's what we've got to, that's what we're trying. That's why I don't have the name for it. It's a little Valentine's Day midge. Well, that's a pretty simple fly, and like I said, it was pretty quick. Hope you liked it. Hope it helps you out.